deliver real equity.
Joining me now is Democratic Congresswoman Barbara Lee of California. She was in the chamber tonight for the president's speech, and right there, you saw she had a conversation with the president after the speech on his way out. Congresswoman Lee, thank you very much for being here.
Hello, Jonathan. Glad to be with you this morning or this evening.
Right. All right, Congresswoman Lee, what y'all talk about?
First of all, I just had to let him know how much I appreciated his speech. And we talked about several things, but one issue that I want to raise that I think is so important, and that is that the president talked about poverty and lifting people out of poverty. And, for so long here in Washington, D.C., using the P word was something that just did not exist. And I chair the task force on poverty and opportunity. And so, making the child tax credit permanent. Right now, half of children living below the poverty line will be lifted out of poverty. And so poverty and eliminating poverty is a big issue for me. And I thanked him for that as part of our conversation, for talking about it and really working on those issues.
Well, another issue that I know is important to you is civil rights. And I'm wondering your reaction to the president of the United States not running away from race, not running away from the problem of white supremacy, but leaning into it. Your reaction to President Biden leaning in on those issues?
Yes, President Biden absolutely is telling the truth, first of all. And he actually said white supremacy is terrorism. He's talked about structural racism and really moving forward to provide for racial equity, racial justice in a whole of government approach. And so to have a president really just come right head on into it, to raise these discussions, to educate the public, and more importantly, to work on policies and his agenda. For me, after so many years of fighting for civil and human rights, to have a president talk about and use the words structural racism and white supremacy, this is transformative, I think, for not only the White House in terms of setting a new standard for presidents, but also for the country, to hear the truth being told by the president of the United States on so many issues that have impacted the African-American community and communities of color, for Black people, for the last 401 years in America.
The president laid out his plans for the American Jobs Plan, the American Families Plan. He touted the success of the American Rescue Plan. Your Republican colleagues are now not complaining, but expressing concern over the $1 trillion and up price tags. What's your argument to them for why spending that money, which is a whole lot of money, why spending that money is vital?
Well, they didn't raise concerns when they passed the couple of $1 trillion in tax cuts for the very wealthy. They didn't complain when they gave corporations a pass where many of them don't have to pay taxes. They didn't complain, of course, when they moved forward on so many issues that really just impacted and made the millionaires and billionaires wealthier, and did not raise the minimum wage for low-wage workers and working men and women. And so they don't complain when it comes to very wealthy corporations taking jobs offshore. They didn't complain about giving tax breaks for for letting companies go offshore rather than hiring Americans and coming back to America. So they don't complain for that. What they complain about is, unfortunately, paying child care workers a living wage, paying home care workers and caregivers a living wage. They don't seem to care about those people who take care of their families also. And so I don't understand quite what their value system is, but believe you me, I know the president and I know our speaker, all of us are trying to work with them to pass these bills in a bipartisan way, because we're working for the people and for their constituents also.
Democratic Congresswoman Barbara Lee of the great state of California, thank you very much for coming on.
Nice being
What's next for Joe Biden? A visit to